Starting a realistic career mode with Juventus is quite a challenge considering the financial issues the club have faced over the last couple of years. Last season they ended up parting ways with the up-and-coming manager Thiago Motta in favour of Igor Tudor, who stepped in to help guide the team to a top 4 finish, securing Champions League football in the process. With several loan deals now made permanent and a couple of fresh faces added to the squad, Juventus still face a crucial task, offloading a few high-wage earners before they can fully reinforce their side for the new season ahead. Here is how you can start a realistic Juventus career mode in FC25 with Igor Tudor at the helm. Kicking things off with the manager's system and the style of play, it's essential to implement the tactical identity from the start to ensure the team reflects his footballing philosophy, which also adds to the realism of your career mode. Tudor typically sets up in a 3-4-2-1 formation, placing strong emphasis on a compact defensive shape, structured pressing, and quick transitions. His wingbacks provide width and high energy, while the double pivots in midfield shields the defense and initiates attacks. The two number 10s play just in behind the striker, where they'll drift into the half spaces and link up and create chances. So be sure to check those out after this video and implement them into your Juventus save. Now let's take a look at the current squad heading into the new season. A number of players have already departed the club, either through loan moves, permanent transfers, or contract expirations. And while the squad still has a strong foundation, there are several others who are expected to leave soon. Offloading these names will be key to Juventus reshaping the team under Igor Tudor and push the club to a more stable and competitive future. So taking a look at the 3 goalkeepers that are currently on the first team books, starting off with Pensoglio, Perin, and then of course Di Gregorio, who has recently signed on a permanent transfer from Monza. I don't think that this is a key area that Juventus will be looking to add to this upcoming window, as they've already made a permanent transfer of their number 1 choice. As for the left wing-back area, there's Rauhi, Cabral, and then of course Cambiasso. Now what I would say for all 3 of these players is trying to convert their positions to try and fit the overall Igor Tudor system. So for example, Cambiasso should probably be converted either into a left or a right midfielder. That way he can shape up on either flank. Whereas Cabral largely featured as a centre-back, more so a left-sided centre-back for Thiago Motta, so it would be quite interesting to see how he fits into the Igor Tudor system. Could he play as the left-sided centre-back in a back 3? That could possibly solve a lot of issues for the club. As for Rauhi, he's been deployed as a wingback at times, either down the left or the right hand flank, but I'm also pretty sure I've seen him feature as a centre back, so he could be an option for either the wingback area or possibly even as an extra centre back. Now speaking of the centre backs, there's currently Rugani, Kelly, Bremer, Djalo, Kalulu, and then of course Gatti. Now Rugani, according to reports, will be reincorporated back into the first team squad, and I do think that he could be quite useful either as a backup option or maybe as a more experienced player in the team. As for Lloyd Kelly, his loan move to Juventus has now been made a permanent one from Newcastle for around 17 million euros, so you should negotiate a deal with Newcastle to try and finalize this move. And then of course there's also Bremer, who is the best centre back at the club currently, and he is also coming off of a massive knee injury last season, so that's probably another reason why the club might be hesitant with getting rid of Rugani, as he could definitely look to back up Bremer as the club looked to ease the Brazilian international back into the mix. As for Djalo, he was loaned out last season to FC Porto, and it does look like Juventus will be trying to sell him this summer window, so he is definitely a player that you should probably look to get rid of. As for Kalulu, he was loaned in from AC Milan last summer, but it does appear that Juventus have been able to finalize that loan move and make it a transfer, so this is another bit of business that you need to execute off the bat. Rounding off the defense at right back, there's Savannah as well as João Mario, who has recently been brought in from FC Porto in a swap deal for Alberto Costa, and then of course there was some money also exchanged in the process. Now it is likely that both of these players will be deployed down the right hand side, so converting both of them into right midfielders makes total and utter sense. You will see that there is a running theme with trying to convert player positions to try and fit Igor Tudor's system, and just like with Locatelli as well as Arta, both of them are set to defensive midfielders. Now of course those positions don't exist in the 3-4-2-1, so trying to convert both of these players into central midfielders will best fit and suit the manager's system. Now speaking of Locatelli, I don't think he'll be going anywhere as he is the club captain and he does pose a very important role in the side, and he has been very good whilst being deployed under the Croatian manager. Whereas Arta, the club have been trying to get off their books for the last 2 seasons or so, loading him out to Girona last year, and it didn't really work out to the point where they would look to try and sign him on a permanent deal, meaning that he is back at Juventus and the club are looking to try and find him a move this transfer window. So he is definitely a player that you should look to sell and bring in some money for. Now another player that will definitely be leaving in this window is Filip Kostic, who by the way was signed on a free transfer a couple of seasons ago from Eintracht Frankfurt, so any sale that does end up happening will effectively allow the club to recoup pure profits, which is very good for the financial aspects of this Juventus career mode. And I do think that that is a large reason as to why they're trying to get rid of Filip Kostic as well, because all in all I do think that this player could probably fit in quite well down that left hand side for Igor Tudor, whipping in crosses and being a very good wing back option. I think that's more or less the position that he did play in at Eintracht Frankfurt. I think it was under Oliver Glasner a couple of years ago. So he does fit the system, but I also think it's more of a financial aspect as to why the club are looking to move him out the door. Now, a player that probably won't be going anywhere for a very long time unless there is an insane amount of money that gets thrown on the table at Juventus's board, and that is Kenan Yildiz. Wears the number 10 for Juve and is a key building block for the team's future. The first thing I would do is try and convert him into an attacking midfielder. It is his third position, but just trying to make things a bit better for the overall system of the 3-4-2-1. Turn him into that left number 10, that attacking midfield role, and make sure that he is the star of your career mode. Now, the central midfield of the team is quite bloated. There are quite a few players in the side that need game time and need minutes, and because Igor Tudor only really plays with a two-man midfield, there will be a few casualties in order to try and rebalance the squad. Now, Douglas Luiz was a player that was brought in last summer for around £50 million, a large amount of money paid for the Brazilian, who had a very good couple of seasons with Aston Villa, but it hasn't really worked out in Serie A. It didn't really work out under Thiago Motta, and it has not worked out under Igor Tudor, to the point where the player relations with the club and the manager have kind of perished and fallen away. So it does look like Juventus will try and cash in on the player, but of course this will be a financial loss on the books. They paid £50 million for him last summer. I don't think they'll be getting anywhere near that amount of money for him this year, because one, he's had a bad season, and two, a lot of clubs know that there are bad relations and Juventus are desperate to try and get him off their books. So maybe around 35 million pounds, which I don't really know how much euros that is. Maybe it's like 40 million euros. That could be a good price for the Brazilian. And there are quite a few Premier League teams that are linked with him. Nottingham Forest, Manchester United being two teams that could possibly swoop in and maybe try and orchestrate a deal for the Brazilian. Now, a player who was quite good last season for Juventus, both under Igor Tudor as well as Thiago Motta, was Weston McKennie. Now, the only issue is Weston McKennie is looking to run his contract down and leave on a free next season. Now, effectively, with the massive financial constraints that Juve are currently in, they can't afford for that to happen. So they are reluctantly looking to try and sell the American to try and recoup some money to try and reinvest it back into the team. So that is why Weston McKennie has been added to the transfer list. As for Tien Koopmeiners and Kethren Turam, I don't see either of these players leaving the club anytime soon. Now, Kethren Turam has definitely come into his own of late, especially during the Club World Cup, where he was stationed alongside Locatelli in that two-man midfield, and he was very, very good at times. So I think that the manager definitely values a player like Kethren Turam in his midfield. He's strong, he's tall, he's physical, but he's also able to move the ball very fluidly across the pitch. As for Tien Koopmeiners, a large amount of money was outlaid last summer for him from Atalanta, as he had just come off of one of his best seasons in his career, of course helping Atalanta win the Europa League and so on. But I don't think the club can afford to get rid of both Douglas Luiz and then Tien Koopmeiners. The only issue that he really has is, where does he fit into the system? Is he an 8 or is he a 10? Can he play in both positions? Can he be that fluid player in the team that gets rotated a lot between the deeper and higher attacking midfield areas? That remains to be seen under Igor Tudor, but he could be a very good player after he's settled in, and maybe it takes a season or two for certain players to settle into a new city, a new team, more or less a new routine for the player. So maybe with a bit more stability under Igor Tudor, you might see the best from Tien Koopmeiners. As for Fabio Moretti, it does seem like he will be finding himself a new club come the summer window. Now, this is another player who's sadly a casualty of being a youth academy player that's looking to be sold for pure profits. If you look at how Juventus have mismanaged their youth prospects over the last couple of seasons, it's actually disgraceful. They sold players like Dean Huijsen, Fagioli, potentially Moretti, and even Mbangulu for low amounts of money with no sign-on clauses, no buyback options, nothing of the sort. It's poor planning, and if you look at a player like Dean Huijsen, he was sold last summer for £13 million to Bournemouth, who then sold him to Real Madrid for around £65 million. And that is a lot of money that a team like Juventus could definitely use. And like I say, Moretti is just another one in a long line of casualties that have come through the Juventus academy and are now looking to be pushed out the club to try and make a bit of money. Now, the last central midfielder is Susanti. Now, I'm not too sure if he will be loaned out. It is possible that that could be the option for him, or he could maybe be a fringe squad player that could be used as a rotational option if players need to be rotated at some point throughout the course of the season. Now, as for Adzic, it does appear that the board do value his potential, and therefore will look to loan him out instead of trying to sell him this summer. For the right midfield / right wingers, there's currently Weah, Conceição, and then of course Nico Gonzalez. As for the number 7 and 11, both were loaned in last summer from Fiorentina and Porto respectively, and both of those deals have been finalized into permanent transfers. So that is definitely a bit of business that you should also look to execute off the bat in this career mode. Whereas as for Timothy Weah, it does appear that he will definitely be leaving the club, and he is heavily linked with Olympique de Marseille. Now, I'm not sure if it was the CEO or maybe even the president of Juve, but he recently came out and stated that Olympique de Marseille have kind of lowballed them in prices for Timothy Weah, because they also know that the player is unhappy in Turin and he is looking to maybe finalize a move back to France. Of course, he came from Lille, I believe, and he came to Juventus, and now he's looking to move back to France, and this time to Marseille. But it does look like that will be a deal that will eventually happen at some point this summer. Now, as for the strikers, there are quite a lot of them on the first team books, 9 to be exact. Now, quite a few of these players will definitely be leaving, whether it's a loan or a transfer out of the club. As for Seri, Angela, and Pugno, they should probably all be loaned out in order to try and get valuable minutes in their legs and help them develop in their careers, and maybe they could come back to Juventus and either be rotational or possibly even star players for the side in the future. And then there's the 4 first team striker options, the first being Milic, then there's Randal Kolo Muani, Jonathan David, and then Vlahovic. Now, in terms of the Polish international, I do think that he will be a vital bench option for the front line, and he has signed a contract extension, either keeping him at the club until 2027 or maybe it's 2028. I'm not too sure on the details on that, but more or less he will be starting with the club come the start of this season. As for Randal Kolo Muani, it is a transfer that is somewhat up in the air. Of course, it was only a loan move to Turin, but he did very well in the 6 months that he was at Juventus, and as a result of that, the club are looking to try and finalize a permanent deal for the French striker. Now, it's my understanding that PSG wants around 30 to 35 million euros for the striker, and that is something that Juventus are trying to negotiate down. And I also think it's down to the fact that they are trying to get rid of Dusan Vlahovic, who is on massive wages and is finding it very difficult to try and, get a new club to have a bit of interest in him. I do know that he was somewhat linked with a move to Manchester United, and that's a deal that more so works out in favor of Juventus because, of course, he's on 350, maybe even 400,000 euros per week. So if you can get that massive wage off your books, you can quite easily go and sign a Randal Kolo Muani from PSG and then have a strike force of Jonathan David, who was signed on a free, a very good bit of business, something that you should definitely look to try and do immediately in your career mode. Randal Kolo Muani and then Milic off the bench. And I mean, to be honest, both Muani as well as David can play in the number 10 positions as well. So you could maybe have a bit of a different approach with your 3-4-2-1 system. And then running off the strikers, there's Pecorino and then Compagnon, both of which should definitely be sold either to lower Serie A sides or maybe even to Serie B. The fourth segment of this video focuses on setting up a youth academy, which plays a big role in the club's long-term planning. Juve have often scouted domestically and are well known for recruiting some of the best emerging talents from across Italy, so placing a scout there is a must. The second scout can be sent to South America, a region the club have increasingly tapped into in recent seasons, bringing in promising young players from countries like Brazil and Argentina. As for the third scout, it's completely up to you, but I would probably suggest looking at Belgium or maybe even the Netherlands to try and find some very good young talents from those areas of the world. With several exits either confirmed or on the horizon, Juventus now shift their focus towards smart recruitment to rebuild the squad for a more promising future. The club are targeting players who will not only fit Igor Tudor's tactical demands, but also align with their long-term vision of building a younger, more dynamic, and financially sustainable team that can challenge both domestically and in Europe once again. So I'll start off with Miguel Gutierrez, who has been linked with several clubs in Italy, and the two big ones being both Napoli and Juventus. Now, the young Spaniard could definitely fit into Igor Tudor's role as a wingback, more so that left wingback, and that could probably see a player like Cambiaso be pushed from the left to the right hand side. Now, this adds a lot of depth to the team, and maybe a player like Cabral could definitely feature more so as that left-sided centre back if a player like Miguel Gutierrez is brought in. Now, when running through the squad, I did mention several central midfielders who could possibly depart this summer, and they'll obviously need replacements. Now, the club are linked with 3 names in particular, the first being Sofian Amrabat, the second being Morten Hjulmand, and the third being Andre from Wolves. All 3 of these players would be fantastic options for that double pivot central midfield area that could definitely complement a player like Thuram or even Locatelli. And we could even see 1 or maybe even 2 additions added to that central midfield department. Now, as for Jadon Sancho, he has been heavily linked with a move to Juventus. I do think that he could definitely fit into Tudor's system and possibly one of those number 10 positions. I don't think he has the work rate to consistently track back in the wider midfield areas, but possibly as one of those number 10s, that could definitely work out. However, at the time of recording this video, nothing has been finalized, but it could definitely be a great option for you to consider for this career mode. Now, in terms of Raheem Sterling, he is in a very similar situation to Jadon Sancho. At Chelsea, he's somewhat unhappy, he's not getting the game time, and of course, Chelsea are looking to get rid of him. So he could maybe be offloaded to Juventus in the summer window, and he could definitely offer a lot of depth for the side, possibly as a wing back, but he doesn't really have that insane work rate, but he could maybe feature as one of the number 10s just in behind the striker, helping link up the play and creating opportunities up front. Now, the last 2 players on this list are Darwin Núñez and then of course Rasmus Højlund, 2 striker options that I think are contingency plans just in case the likes of Randal Kolo Muani's deal between PSG and Juventus falls through. Both are quite young still, being 21/22 and 25/26 respectively, and they could definitely come in and help impact the team in a positive manner. Of course, that is for the right price, because there's no point in getting rid of Dusan Vlahovic and then replacing him with Darwin Núñez for £70 million or euros. That doesn't make financial sense. But if they can somehow get a deal for around 40, 45, maybe even 50 million for one of Darwin Núñez, or 30 to 40 million for Rasmus Højlund, that makes complete and utter sense, especially from a financial aspect. So there we go, people. That is how you can start a realistic career mode with Igor Tudor and Juventus in FC25. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you don't mind smashing that like button down below, whilst also subscribing to the channel if you are new and you like the content and the overall appeal of it. That would be absolutely fan-damn-tastic. And if you're looking for any extra content, I do have the Brom Gaming Patreon, where I make extra content on there. I've said extra content twice in a row, and that has given me a bit of the ick. But regardless, I do make extra videos on that platform. So the link for that will be down below in the description, right next to the link for the Brom Gaming Discord, where we chat everything IRL football, as well as FC25 and even FC26. And hopefully in the future, at some point, FIFA 2K would be amazing if it does come out at some point. But yes, we discuss all that good stuff on the Discord, and the link for that will also be down below in the description. Anyways, people, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a smashing goddamn day, and I'm out of here. Peace.